Galamsey has been a topical issue, especially since Aisha Huang's news emerged. On Face to Face today, I'm engaging the man who the president gave a job to protect our water bodies and our natural resources plus our lands. My name is Umaru Sanda, and you're welcome to Face to Face. Honorable Abu Jinapor was a deputy chief of staff, became member of parliament for Damongo, a feat that NPP MPs or people would not usually be able to achieve, but he has done that. And the president gave him a job as Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, a president who has put the fight against galamsey, his neck on the line for the fight against galamsey. He must really have trusted this man. Honorable Jinapor, you're welcome to Face to Face.
Thank you very much.
How are you? I was just telling my viewers that Damongo is not a place that is very easy for the elephants. But even though you have elephants in the Mole Park.
Yes, it's a difficult terrain.
Yeah, but how is it doing? How is your constituency?
I think fairly okay. We are getting a lot done in the constituency. And of course, early days yet, but I'm confident that we should be able to consolidate the gains we made in the 2020 elections.
You have been a regional capital for 2 or 3 years now. Does that change anything in terms of development for your community members?
Tremendously. As you know, the regional capital and first of all, the creation of the region itself brings about a lot of developments which you wouldn't have received but for the creation of the region. In the past, it was northern region. So if you talked about the police high command, it was only in Tamale. If you talked about the immigration command, it was in Tamale. If you talk about health insurance, it was in Tamale. But today, all the decentralized public institutions are having to establish their regional offices in Damongo. And what is even made it more interesting is that, pursuant to the vision of the president, the regional offices and headquarters are being spread across the region. So you have, for example, the regional headquarters for health services being situated in Daboya, and then you have some in Bole, some in Bupe. So it's brought about a lot of development.
So you're decentralizing the region, and for that matter, the administration is helping. But would it really matter? Because even if you had northern region, the resource that is going to northern region is what is going to be divided and then some given to northeast Savannah.
Not necessarily.
Would it really change much?
Not necessarily. So you wouldn't have had all these regional offices in Damongo if it was still northern region as originally constituted.
Okay.
And besides, when the national cake is being shared, it is shared based on regional basis.
Okay.
So Savannah region will still receive its own, of course, as a region. I appreciate that the population of a region, the size of the region, and the peculiar dynamics of a particular region will also mean what is given to the region. But I mean, I think it's with a sense of unanimity across the region and in the country that the creation of these 6 new regions is brought about development into those regions, and also brought about, most importantly, governance to the doorstep of these people. As you know, Northern region was a vast region, and if you had to travel from Bole all the way to Tamale to get a passport and to get public services and so on and so forth, it was just a problem. So the region has brought about a lot of development.
Looking at the political side of things, when you created OT region, the only constituency you had there as MPP, you lost it. Does it guarantee that creating a constituency would give you a seat or a number of seats?
Well, first of all, I'm not too sure that you have to create a region based on political considerations alone and electoral considerations. And I was a deputy chief of staff at the time these regions were created, and I was very much involved in the thinking that went into the creation of these regions. They were not for electoral reasons at all or political reasons at all. They were purely because the dynamics at the time and also even now meant that there was a need for the creation of this region. You take Savannah region, for example. The people of Savannah region have been clamoring for this region for almost 40 years now, and there have been petitions upon petitions, and on cogent grounds where concrete reasons why the indigenes of the region wanted a region created. Of course, when you do you chalk such a feat, one expects that you'll be rewarded electorally or politically. But don't also forget that in T region, the presidential vote, the MPP share of the presidential vote went up considerably. And I think we moved from 14% or so to some 25% or so of the vote. So that in itself was good. Always remember that parliamentary elections, the dynamics of parliamentary elections very peculiar.
From President. Let's move and come to Accra. So your job is a Minister of Land. Let's talk about a few things in your ministry before we talk about galamsey, which is what many people are looking up to. But land, the acquisition of land, the issue of land guards, is that something that comes to your ministry, or Land Commission deals with those matters?
It comes directly under my ministry. As you know, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources is responsible for the lands, the forests, and the mineral resources of Ghana. So all the mineral resources, the lands and forest resources of Ghana come under the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. And our mandate is to ensure the efficient, intelligent exploitation and management of the lands, forests, and mineral resources of Ghana. So land comes directly under the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. And I should point out also that, yes, there's always a lot of talk about galamsey and illegal, rightly so, not two ways about that. I mean, it should be, because the impact of mining on the environment and our country and our very survival is huge. But that said, always remember, and I've made this point many, many times, the issues involved in land administration in Ghana are as complex, as intricate, and the consequences of those issues are as enormous as I think galamsey will be. And I take that view very strongly. And the issue of land guards, the issue of how we administer land,
the land tenure system,
and all of that is absolutely important. But a lot is being done. As you know, the new Land Act, Act 1026, which was promulgated in 2020 and assented to in December 2020, which is now very much being implemented. It's helping a great deal in resolving some of the issues involved in land administration in Ghana. I mean, until the new Lands Act, the issue of land guard had not been specifically criminalized as comprehensively as it's been done by the new Land Act. So is it also that we have brought about some reforms in the administration of land in our country. In the past, for example, you needed to go, when you had to conduct a search, you conduct a search at land title, you conduct a search at Lands Commission itself, you conduct a search at Survey Department, and in respect of one parcel of land, you could get 3 different conflicting search results. We've changed that, and we've consolidated searches. And so now you go to one port of call, and then you conduct your search and you get one result. A good deal of work is also being done to digitize the records of land in our country, what we call the land reform program, which is going to see to the total digitization of all the records of lands across our country, and also the digitalizing them and getting it to function and be fit for purpose. Okay. So yes, you are right. It's a big issue.
The issue for land for me is that you don't control the land. So how can you really manage it? Because some chief somewhere or some family somewhere decides that this is what we want to do with our land. You, the government, of course, you are supposed to control things, but you don't own the thing. So they decide what they want to do with it. How really can you have a grasp of that?
Okay, so that's a very good, intelligent question. The reason why it's good and intelligent is because that is at the heart of land administration in Ghana in particular. So my response to that is Lands Commission, as a creation of the Constitution, in the best of worlds, should be the repository of all land records in Ghana. Public lands, stool lands, family lands, clan lands, Tendana lands, all lands in Ghana, in the best of worlds. The various regional lands commissions across the 16 regions of Ghana should have a record of all those lands. So Umaru Sanda land, if you go to Lands Commission in the Savannah region, they should have the full records of the Umaru Sanda land, when it began all the way to now. Yes, so you are right, and it's a point I've made over and over again, and it depends on the prism through which you look at the matter. Unlike other African countries, particularly Eastern African countries, Ghana's land tenure system is unique. It's unique because, as you know, our forebears fought against the appropriation of Ghanaian lands, and our forebears refused for the crown to appropriate the lands of Ghana. As you recall, in 1876, John Mensah Saba and Co. through the Aborigines Rights Protection Society stood against the Crown Bills Act of 1876, which was successful in places like Zimbabwe, Kenya, and the rest, and which culminated into a situation where the state, as you've rightly pointed out, has very limited land in Ghana. I mean, for example, in Asantema, in Ashanti region, the public lands of Asantema is just 10%. All the lands in Ashanti region are vested in a golden stool. It was because, unlike in East Africa, when the colonial powers attempted to appropriate the lands in Ghana, our forebears said no. And therefore, the lands remained in the hands of the chiefs, the clans, and the rest. Of course, you look at it in some way, you may think that it was a good thing. You look at it in another way, you may think it wasn't a good thing. I think it was a good thing because it helped us a great deal. And it's vested the lands in the chiefs and clans of our country, which is why in Ghana, it is said, John Mensah Saba famously said, there's nothing like ownerless land in Ghana. Every land is owned.
I don't know.
But then, what it then, the problem it presents, as you've rightly pointed out, is that because the state doesn't have control over the, not so much control or ownership or title over the land, keeping records of the land becomes a bit of a problem because the chief is granted interest in the land. Lands Commission itself doesn't have the wherewithal to ensure that its records keeping is fit for purpose. But that is exactly what we are working on.
So are they helping you? Because I am a chief, I have a land around East La or somewhere, or the family, we decide who we want to sell to. Are they obligated to come and tell the land commission that we have sold land A to A, B, C, D? Because multiple sales of land is also a problem.
Absolutely obligated by law. As a matter of fact, the New Lands Act stipulates that even before you can grant interest in land, a chief can grant interest in land, you must have a development scheme which should be approved by the local assembly, which should be approved by the Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority, formerly Town and Country Planning, LUSPA. It should be approved first of all, and then the interest be registered with Lands Commission.
But that's what the law says. That in practice, that doesn't happen. If LUSPA were around, we wouldn't see a lot of buildings being put on waterways.
Well, that's our work. It's work in progress, and it's such a complex work with far-reaching consequences that we are trying to deal with it systematically. So that is the point I made. The New Lands Act is very useful because until then you did not have legislative framework to deal with it. At least today we have a legislative and statutory framework which says that before a chief sells land, you have to register this, you have to register with Lands Commission, and so on and so forth. That is very useful. The next phase will be putting in place the infrastructure to give effect to all of these arrangements, which is really the issue of the system of digitizing the records of Lands Commission, which is absolutely important.
Talking about ownership of land, the one that has shocked Ghanaians the most is that a ghost apparently owned a significant portion of our Achimota forest, and forgive me to use that land, but I'm referring to Sir John. You do recall the events around that. What is the status now of that Sir John will that has led to a national scandal of a sort? Your ministry was neck deep involved in solving that matter. You even extended it to the Sakumo Ramsar site. What's the status on these lands that have been acquired by private individuals who don't have the right to?
Well, the first principle is that public lands ought to be protected of all sorts. If you look at our constitution carefully, the constitution vests all public lands in the president for and on behalf of the Ghanaian people. So, as a matter of fact, the public lands of Ghana belong to the Ghanaian people. The president is just a trustee, and if you know the duties of a trustee, their fiduciary duties, they are the highest level of duty. So, and I, as his minister, is responsible for discharging those duties on his behalf. So, public lands ought to be protected. Achimota Forest inclusive. Now, the Sir John will, I'm not too sure I want to go back into those matters, but really the will, we are told, is being contested. I don't know to what extent that has been resolved by the courts, but be that as it may, and granted that the will is valid and that he acquired those lands, I mean, I said in my statement, I found that very inappropriate and will clearly be a situation of conflict. To be a CEO of Forestry Commission managing a forest and yourself appropriating some of the lands to yourself will be a clear case of conflict, and that is granted that the will is found to be valid, and indeed and in fact he did appropriate these lands onto himself. But the matters are still at large, the matters are still being contested. So
aside the conflict part, what I'm interested in, you said you had frozen ownership. Do you have the power?
I have vitiated any ownership whatsoever, and therefore those...
Under what law?
under the provisions of our constitution, which make the president the trustee of public lands in Ghana.
Forget that Sir John was CEO of Forestry Commission. Sir John was a private person who's decided that I want to buy land. There's a negotiation, consideration. He settles this is his land. Then the Minister for Land, after his death, says that that land he has willed to his son or nephew or whoever should not be given to that nephew.
But you also don't forget that he's not a private person.
No, I'm just saying that because but
even if he was a private person,
that's a conflict of interest. But aside the conflict of interest, he genuinely perhaps paid for whichever land he got or however he got it.
Well, whatever it
Can you just collect a land from somebody? That's what I mean.
I'm saying to you that I didn't find any title. He doesn't have any title to those lands. I checked from the Lands Commission. The Lands Commission's record suggests that he doesn't have title, and the even title can be defeated, as you know. The lawyers say that title to land is indefeasible, but it's divisible under some grounds of fraud, grounds of proving mistake, misrepresentation, and so on and so forth. So all of that.
So these are things you could consider.
Things you can consider. But in the case of this matter, he's not a private individual. But as I also say, and I have to continue to emphasize on that, these matters are still at large. They've not been established. They've not been proven yet. But whatever the case will be, the decision I took was that, come what may, those lands will not pass. So they will not form part of his estate. So
we have to pay compensation to the people who are supposed to benefit from his will.
Nobody's asked for compensation. Nobody's claimed for compensation. But I don't think a claim for compensation in those circumstances will be sustained.
What is the status of that family that owned a portion, which you have admitted to based on a number of records that you have presented? Is it the case that it has been hived off, given to them now? What is the general status?
The Wu family?
Yes, the Wu family.
Yeah, so those matters are still being examined by the ministry.
When will we find closure? When will we hear?
Very soon. A team is looking at them carefully. You recall that I gave a full account of the history and background to this particular issue, and it began way in President Kufuor's government's time, and I put all the facts out there. By giving the totality of the circumstances, I did make the commitment that the ministry was going to take a very detailed look at the history, the background, and what has led us to where we are today, which work is being done. When the work is completed, we will take the appropriate decisions, and definitely we will communicate to the Ghanaian.
I went to the Ramsar site at Sakumono. People have built there. Your colleague at the Greater Accra Coordinating Council, the regional minister, has said he was moving in, and I believe that's also an area you have an interest in. Is there any action that has been taken there worthy of sharing with us?
So yes, the Greater Accra Regional Coordinating Council, and for that matter, the Greater Accra Regional Security Council and my ministry are working very closely to safeguard the various public lands of Greater Accra in particular. And the Ramsar site is one of those. The strategy we've adopted is, at the very beginning to secure the site and prevent further encroachment, which the security apparatus are doing so effectively. There's also the issue of people who are built not just on the Ramsar site, but on public lands across the country. You now have to take a decision. People have built, they've roofed, they've furnished, they live in these properties. And they acquired the lands maybe years ago, 10, 20 years ago. Is it in the public interest to demolish those structures? Or what do you do? So we're at that stage. But the thinking is that where the infrastructure is not far advanced and where it will be in the public interest to demolish and reclaim the land, we will do so. But in circumstances or in situations where it will appear that demolishing the structures will in itself not be in the public interest because the development would have been complete and the developments would have been, or the communities have been established on those public lands, just so that the state is not left without any revenue, you pursue what we call regularization, which is that these people will be called upon to pay some money to the state in lieu of the public lands they have appropriated to themselves. So that is the thinking.
So this thinking then would mean that if I went to a wetland at Ramsar site, which is supposed to be protected, and I put up a 10-bedroom apartment or a hotel, because I have finished the building, roofed it on the blind side of the state, if the state finds out, it will not remove that building. That wetland ceases to exist. that would be a crime against nature.
No, that would not be the thinking. Of course, we have to have limitations, and we have to have categorization. So that will not be the case. If you go and build on a waterway, and it will mean that flooding, or it will occasion flooding to kill thousands of people, then that will also be the public interest. So the matters will be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. But the example, the hypothetical example you've just given me, will warrant, obviously, that those structures, regardless of the nature of them, be demolished.
So the wetlands
will be dealt with on a case-by-case basis.
So the Ramsar issue, you are dealing with it on case-to-case. But for those who have not finished their building, it will go down. Those who have finished, you consider whether to pull it down or not. Is that the position?
That is the thinking. But as I say, it will be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. So the particular public land on which this encroachment is taking place will have to be examined, and the totality of the circumstances will inform the decision which will be taken, including the factors you have enumerated as wetlands, flooding-prone areas, and so on and so forth. Okay. So all of those will be taken into account, and a decision will then be made that in this particular enclave, do we go on the path of regularization, or we go on a path of demolition?
Talking about ownership and the challenges, the people of La have consistently been demonstrating. They say that the government acquired their land because the state can do that. There was a purpose for that. That purpose is not being used now. Instead, the government is giving the land to its own cronies and appointees who are buying land around Chado and all those places, Burma Camp Hill and all those places. What does the ministry know about that situation, and what are you doing? Because recently they demonstrated, and it's always like a cat and mouse game with the soldiers at Burma Camp.
Well, first of all, the very fashionable talk of government is selling land to its cronies, to government appointees, and so on and so forth. I think we should get to the point where we go beyond just saying it, and get to the point of naming, exposing, and dealing with people. So if somebody knows that a government official or a government appointee or any individual is purchased public land in a manner that the person ought not to have, you have to make it known, and not just the usual thing about, or mantra of government officials are purchasing land and appropriating land to themselves. I think it doesn't help us, and it's all of us: journalists, civil society actors, citizens, chiefs, allodia title owners, and we should go beyond just talking about it and naming people and providing evidence so that these things can be dealt with.
But the people of La say that the land at Chado and those places should not be given to any private individual, but they see private individual, whether they are journalists or politicians. The fact remains that that land is being sold to private, and they are saying that it is not right. That's not why government took the land from them.
Well, I'll get to that substantive matter, but I've been here for a year and a half now. Nobody's provided me with any evidence of private individuals encroaching upon public lands. But the point I'm making is a bigger issue, and it is so across the country. In Northern Region, for example, members of parliament from the minority side, from Northern Region, led by the minority leader, held a press conference and complained about encroachment of certain lands in Tamale Hospital and the rest. When it came to my attention, we dealt with it, and dealt with it swiftly, and have given the instruction that no public land should be granted in Tamale Metropolis until further notice. And all grants which have been given in and around the hospital neighborhood shall not be pursued until we get to the bottom of that matter. That is how you deal with issues, because at the end of the day, Umaru, we all have to appreciate that a lot of these matters, land, forest, minerals, is for us, and we have a collective responsibility to protect them. And those of us who have been given the privilege and responsibility to manage these resources, you do us a lot of good when you give us some hard evidence, or you give us some leads for us to deal with. The substantive matter of the line, the military and Chado and all of that, it is a matter that has been dealt with, and we are almost at the point of closure. I think you also observe that lately the agitations have died down. Mm-hmm. It is simply because we are almost at the point of closure, and we are getting to closure through a methodical approach.
Okay.
I can't just sit here and say public lands like people should take, or Yagbonwura should take, or
No, don't bring Yagbonwura to Accra. You cause trouble. Bring Yagbonwura here.
I can't do that.
Okay.
We have to have a correct basis.
So you are engaging them. There's an engagement happening.
We are almost through with
Okay, very well. This is Face to Face on Citi TV. My name is Umaru Sanda. My guest is the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, the Honorable Samuel Abu Jinapor. Please stay with us. You're welcome back to Face on Citi TV. I am Umaru Sanda. My guest is the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources and MP for Damongo, the Honorable Samuel Abu Jinapor. Let's talk about Aisha Huang. Where did you get it wrong as a government?
Well, I'm not too sure about getting it wrong or right. First of all, I think it's important for us to all appreciate that you are having to deal with these matters to do with criminal conduct in our country, in all the spheres of our national life. That's number one. That's the responsibility of the government. Criminal conduct in all the spheres of our national life, by citizens or by foreigners. And you deal with those matters in several sectors of your national life. The fishing industry, the mining industry, the petroleum industry, all of that. It's the responsibility of government to do that. Then thirdly, you have a situation where you have a particular sector or you have a particular industry where it appears that foreigners are leading the perpetuation of criminality, which is the mining industry. And so one of the things that the government is, for instance, done is to amend the Minerals and Mining Act 206, Act 703 through Act 995 to actually increase the punishment for foreigners being involved in illegal small-scale mining. Punishment for foreigners being involved in illegal small-scale mining was almost a misdemeanor in the previous law. As it is today, a judge has no discretion but to give a sentence of, I think, 20 years to 25 years, minimum sentence. In the past, the judge had a discretion either to impose a fine or, to give a sentencing of 1 year. Government, Akufo-Addo's government in 2020, went to Parliament to amend Act 703 to make the punishment for foreigners being involved in illegal small-scale mining more punitive and more deterrent. Why? Because the government recognized that the element of foreigners being involved in illegal small-scale mining was a very disturbing trend which the government had to respond to. And that was the response of the government. So I give you this background just to make the point. Yes, Aisha Huang she's become some sensational character in Ghana. And I'm not too sure that I will fault those who find it sensational, because there's a lady who was involved in illegal mining in 2014 in Ghana, was arrested on 2 or 3 occasions and was released, was arrested again in 2016 and was released, was arrested I think in 2018 and was supposed to be repatriated or whichever way you look at it.
I don't look at it in whichever way. The position is a bit conflicting and confusing. This is a government that says we realize that we are not getting enough from the fight against galamsey, so we're going to change the law. But before we change the law, this lady, we're going to deport her because it serves our better interest or best interest. That's what Senior Minister at the time, Yaosafo Mafo, said. It turns out that she returned just a week after. Now, the government, we are supposed to trust you that you man our borders for us. I mean, we have porous borders, that's all right. But she gets involved in galamsey issues. She's been back and running business. That is a sign of a government that doesn't have control over a single human being, not to talk about a whole community of illegal miners.
No, that is not correct. That cannot be correct. And indeed, that is really, I wish we had time to delve into these matters. And it's my little personal passion to try and get people to appreciate the complexities and the nuances of this industry of illegal small-scale mining. And even if I had the opportunity to have people like you, civil society actors, journalists, take a tour and get to understand what are the complexities of illegal small-scale. If you did, you appreciate some of these. So to begin with, at the time Aisha Huang was arrested, as I've been trying to explain to you, the law relating to foreigners being involved in illegal small-scale was almost a misdemeanor. Mm-hmm. And you had situations where even a lot of these people were taken to court and they were acquitted. It's a matter that we have to have a conversation on. It's a matter that we have to be blunt about, that we have to be forthright about. And it's a matter that the president and the government at the time had multiple occasions to bring it to the attention of the then Chief Justice and the judiciary about the acquittal of foreigners who are involved in illegal small-scale mining. The law even was not sufficient, in my view, and in the view of the government at the time. The government then had a decision to make. Do you repatriate this lady or do you deport her? The semantics of that, I don't want to get into.
Is it semantics really, or
it's
a confusion in the government?
It is a deportation or repatriation. Bottom line is that she was sent out of Ghana. But the question is, do you send her out of Ghana, or do you take her to court and she's fined a pittance? Which one deals with the canker that we have? So that had always been a dilemma that government in that period had to always deal with.
What was your position, or what's your position
I was
on?
Deputy Chief of Staff at the time. I'm getting myself appraised of the facts and the background now. And I'm telling you what went into the thinking, not just in relation to Aisha Huang, but generally what you deal with foreigners. 3 or 4 days ago, we arrested 154 foreigners who were involved in illegal small-scale mining. And even how to keep them was a problem. And whether you take them to the police and the police ask questions, you take them to immigration and immigration says, if you bring them here, our remit is just immigration laws, and we'll find out that they flouted immigration laws, they'll be deported. We had to deal with it. The national security had to come in for us to keep them, and so on and so forth. But these are some of the complexities you always have to deal with. And I am saying that Aisha Huang's case should not be looked at in isolation. It should be looked at in the context of foreigners being involved in Ghanaian industries and perpetuating criminality, and how we deal with it. And therefore, yes, I mean, she was sent away, she slipped back into the system and all of that. That is bad enough. That should not be countenanced. That cannot be celebrated. And it's unfortunate that happened.
Did you have a briefing as a minister for the sector as of last 2 weeks when the president spoke in the Volta region on the situation with Aisha Huang?
I've been following matters to do with illegal small-scale mining from all the spectrum.
No, specific on Aisha Huang.
Of course,
I'm on top of
the situation.
The president was unsure. Did you not brief him before he went for that interview?
The president was not unsure.
He was?
No, he wasn't.
He used two phrases.
No. You should listen to the president.
You have been his aide before he became president. You have been his chief of. You know him better than 1,000 million of people. Please tell me what was going through the president's mind when he spoke.
The president was not unsure. The president was made the point very categorically that this lady left the country. Reparation, she left.
That was not categorical.
Hold on, reparation, she went through deportation, and so those are semantics. But the point I am making,
Honorable Minister, you are a lawyer. You know the difference between repatriation and deportation, and you also know the difference between these two and fleeing, which is what the president used. The president used, he's not sure there was deportation. Maybe she may have fled the jurisdiction. These are two entire different scenarios that we are discussing. And for the president to be unsure of that as recently as 2 weeks ago, when this lady was sent away about 4 years ago, that is a problem. Either those of you who are his appointees are not briefing him, or he has been briefed but he has forgotten. Because initially he had said it was a mistake to deport the lady. Today he says he thinks she fled. So what should we believe that really happened at our borders? Did the lady run away on her own? Did she get deported or repatriated?
You see, but
when you do these things, what is the position?
The issue, the situation, and I think that the realm you are operating from and other people are operating from is so that the indication is that the president or even me, the minister or the government, our entire effort revolves around Aisha Huang. Aisha Huang is just one Chinese woman who's flouted the laws of Ghana.
But it's a test stone.
No,
it's a touchstone.
It cannot be a test. It's a test stone, just as the 154 foreigners who were arrested a week are a test stone. And so is it that the foreigners who are involved, the Burkinabes, the Malians, the Nigerians, the Chinese people who have been arrested as I speak to you today will also be a test stone. So it is the assumption that the president's whole mind and effort revolves around Aisha Huang. Aisha Huang has been arrested today. She is being prosecuted. And she'll be prosecuted in Ghanaian law, under Ghanaian law, in Ghanaian court. If she's found guilty, which I believe she should and will be found, I believe so.
You're hoping?
I hope so, and I think I'm not making prejudicial comments, but I'm saying that given the facts that I have, I am expecting that Aisha Huang will be found guilty, convicted, and sentenced, and thrown into Ghanaian jail. That has become possible because of the substantive legislative and policy interventions that the government of President Akufo-Addo is put in place. If we did not, a judge would have had a discretion to fine her, for example.
It's good.
And there's nothing that the government could have done. Working with Parliament, we brought Act 995, which is ousted the discretion from a judge sitting in court to met out a fine to a foreigner who is found to be involved in illegal smuggling. I would think, Umaru Sanda, with the greatest of respect, that's where our focus should be. So that's where our focus should be, how we uproot the canker and the menace or the situation of foreigners being involved in criminal enterprises and cartels in the various sectors of our nation, whether in the mining sector, in the fishery sector, in the petroleum sector, in the security of our state, in terrorism, and so on and so forth. That is where our focus should be. But I'm not going to begrudge those who find Aisha Huang as a very single-item sensational man.
I actually like the sensational part, which I'm going to come to next. They said that she has sex tapes of a lot of influential people, and that's why she's not being prosecuted. Is that something you take seriously as a government? That could be a blackmail, could have been the reason that she's been evading the security detail all this one?
My attitude to all of those things, when they come to my attention, you have to expose them. Bring it out.
You were not a minister at the time, so you can confidently say this.
In all form or shape, because where I sit, and I'm sure you've been around long enough to know, a minister for lands and natural resources is always
the last person.
Always have a situation of people, the gossips here and there. Galamsey people bringing money. These people.
It doesn't happen to you?
Never. When these things come, we have to expose them. We cannot continue to be in a realm of gossips, especially when we are trying to build a country and we are trying to have a strong, serious governance architecture. If a Chinese lady claims she has sex tapes of ministers or deputy ministers, the minute after that allegation is made, those tapes should be out there. People like you should go and dig them out and put them out. If there are ministers in President Akufo-Addo's government or in President Mohammed's government or President Mills or any minister, Ghanaian minister who goes to trade sex for favors to a Chinese woman, that person should not be sitting in an air-conditioned office like we are today. It should be in Sawam.
Aside Aisha, have there been attempts to influence you, maybe financially, I'm not going to use sexually, financially to let you allow people to do galamsey?
It hasn't been.
It hasn't been.
Yes.
This is Face to Face on Citi TV. My name is Umaru Sanda. My guest is the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, the Honorable Samuel Abu Jinapor. Please stay with us. You're welcome back to Face on Citi TV. I am Umaru Sanda. My guest is the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources and MP for Damongo, the Honorable Samuel Abu Jinapor. Let's conclude on the general fight against galamsey. The President said he was putting his neck on the line. You are the man whose job it is to ensure that he solves that problem. Of course, you are the one who is coming to take over from other people who are done other way. What's your genuine belief of the status of the fight against galamsey? A lot of people think we've lost it. Our water bodies are still like Milo.
First of all, I don't look at it from the point of view of losing it or winning it. I don't look at it that way. I look at it very respectfully that we have a problem, we have a situation we have to deal with. Umaru, you check out everywhere in the world where you have an extractive industry, that is the petrochemical industry, the mining industry, or whatever industry where the common denominator or the basic ingredient of that industry is money. So here we are talking about minerals, and minerals is money. Here we're talking about gold, and gold is money. You always have a serious problem of endemic criminality, endemic and systemic criminality in all the sectors. Just yesterday, I was watching a program on the South African Broadcasting Corporation, where there was a very comprehensive documentary on illegal small-scale mining in South Africa. In fact, there they call it Zamazama. We call it here galamsey. They call it Zamazama. And one of the experts was talking about how the situation is getting so bad that in the past they used money to influence people to perpetuate this criminal enterprise in South Africa. And that it's now become, the situation is getting so bad that threat of death is become the tool by which the illegal small-scale miners are using to perpetuate this criminal enterprise. Threat of death to police officers, to public officers, to policy makers, to many in South Africa just yesterday.
So it's not exclusive to us
at all. Even in Australia, in Canada, in the United States, you have the issue of illegal small-scale mining. I don't make this point as a defense or as an excuse. No, I make this point to situate the situation of illegal small-scale mining in its proper context, and which is why, since the 1980s, when the PNDC law came into being to legalize small-scale mining, we as a country have been grappling with the issue of illegal small-scale all through the 90s, all through the year 2000s to date. And I make this point just to establish that in dealing with this illegal small-scale mining, it will call for a collective action, a national action. I have a huge responsibility as a Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, and I will not shake it. And I'm not oblivious of that responsibility. I'm very awake to that responsibility. But you have a responsibility too. The chiefs have responsibility. Local authorities have responsibility. The citizens have responsibility. Look, a great deal of work has been done in respect of this illegal small-scale mining. Tremendous work. First of all, with the issue of reformation, because you have to always deal with this matter from a two-pronged approach. The reformative effort will have to mean that you are reforming the whole sector, the regulation of the sector, the way the mining is done, the issue of community mining, the mercury-free gold processing equipment we brought, the online application system, the issue of even ensuring that the small-scale miners association themselves become partners in rooting out the illegalities in that sector. All of those constitute the reformative efforts we are making. Then you have the enforcement mechanism, which we are ramping up now. The Operation Halt and all the measures we're having to put in place are being, as I speak to you, ramped up. And we are enhancing the measures and putting in additional measures to deal with this matter. Of course, there's also the phenomenon of people circulating old videos of mining and brazen mining just to cause hysteria for their own purposes. That is not really my concern. Okay. But fundamentally, my response to your question, fundamentally, is that a great deal of work has been done, considerable moving forward, and I don't want to use the word achievement, but considerable progress has been made.
As a media house, and I believe that it will be fair to take credit for the media campaign against galamsey that we started it. When we started, our reporter went to the brim and fetched water from the brim, and then a brim, and then I think the other ones in the central region, and brought it to the office. So we put it on a shelf. And in 3 months in that campaign, we went to fetch another bottle, and we wanted to compare and contrast. As a government that started this fight in 2017, are you saying to me that you don't have a means of testing to see, okay, so we started at this point, we've deployed soldiers, we've done galam stop, we've done drones.
We do have a means.
In 4 years' time, we need to have it. I mean, otherwise you can't fight what you can't. The
stability levels of the river bodies is your number one litmus test.
And it's still bad. The Ghana Water Company says very soon they'll stop producing water in some communities. After 4 years of fighting, that's a lost battle.
It's not. It's not a lost battle, and I don't look at it from the point of view of lost or win.
That's the only way we can use to test.
The stability levels of some of the river bodies I have seen are improving, and indeed even visibly River Pra, River Pra, for example, visibly you can see that there's some improvement. If you want, come up with me. Next week I'm going on a tour of the mining regions of our country. Come with me, and you yourself, you will have a proper assessment of the situation on the ground. In many parts of our country, the community mining is working and working well. In some places, on the major river bodies of our country, there's 24/7 patrol by the Navy because we've acquired speedboats for them, and the work is going on. But it's always important to underscore the point that the fight against galamsey and the effort to sanitize the small-scale mining sector cannot be an event. From the day I went for vetting before Parliament, I made it abundantly clear, and I will not depart from that. It cannot be an event. It is a process. It cannot be the sole responsibility of government. It requires collective action, which is why I'm scheduled to meet the National House of Chiefs to call upon them one more time to come to our aid, which is why I'm going to meet media people like you to call for your support, which is why I'm going to meet civil society organizations to call for their support, which is why next week I'm having a meeting with MMDCs from mining areas of our country and regional ministers from the mining to call for their support. The police have a role to play, the security forces have a role to play, the MMDCs have a role to play, the chiefs have a role to play.
I don't want you to take my word for it. I am saying that Ghana Water Company is a state company. I'm not sure they would come out and paint the government black by saying to us that the water bodies are still in bad shape and that they may even stop producing water in some communities.
The water bodies are in a good shape.
No, I'm just saying. So I'm just saying that we are just looking at how to track the system.
I went to River Ankobra with the Minister for Water Resources, the woman who is responsible for water in our country. I went there with her, and we were all very clear in our minds that if the situation continues, it's going to have a major debilitating impact on the supply of water in our country. So is it that it's impacting on the cocoa industry? So I'm not suggesting here whatsoever
that we have won the battle. You don't even want to. You don't even want to see it. You don't even want to see it like that.
I can't even begin to put my mind in that frame.
When will we win that battle? When will we win that battle? We have the law. We have the soldiers. So
when will you win the battle against armed robbery? No, you cannot look at it from the point of view of winning or losing a battle.
Even if you put your presidency on the line.
Well, when the president says he's put his presidency on the line, I think it simply means he will do whatever he has to do regardless of the political consequences, to ensure that that sector is sanitized.
And resign if he's failing.
And he paid the political consequences in 2020. He lost all the mining constituencies in our country except Takwa because he was seen to be fighting illegal small-scale mining. Whereas when he was doing that, other presidential candidates were telling miners that if they were voted into office, they would take them out of prison. We all have a responsibility. Otherwise, we cannot deal with illegal small-scale mining.
Finally, the proper people, the proper companies that are doing the mining, as your ministry, what engagements are you having with organizations, companies that are engaging in proper mining, and even how to get other investors to join us here to fix our mining?
As you know, we are even, we started an award scheme. The maiden edition was last year. We're having a second edition this year in December. And in fact, the mercury-free gold processing equipment we brought, one of the yardsticks, one of the criteria for the distribution of these equipment is that your mining must be environmentally prudent and it must be a responsible small-scale mining. And look, there are a good number of people out there who are engaged in this mining operation very responsibly.
Are you going to bring us investors very soon?
Well, it's all the work that we're doing. That's all the work we're doing. That's the Bank of Ghana purchasing of gold. It's something that I've been actively involved. It's all part of sanitizing small-scale mining, which is the point I keep making, and I want to conclude on that. Look, a great deal of work has gone into this matter. We've been doing tremendous work on it. We are certainly not where we should be. We are not in a situation where I can say as minister or the government can say, or you should say as a citizen that we're in a satisfactory situation. Never, we are not. But that said, considerable work has been done. The determination to come to grips and to get on top of this matter is totally unflinching.
Honourable Minister, thank you for your time on Face to Face. Indeed. And that's how we enter this edition of Face to Face. My name is Umaru Sanda. My guest was Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, the Honourable Samuel Abdullahi Jinapor. Please stay with us.